Introducing the number 1A folding pocket Kodak Model D. This handy little pocket camera can even be loaded in daylight. With its stylish red bellows and brass shutter cover, you too can become an influencer in 1900s style.
Today we're going to check out this 1909 Kodak number 1A folding pocket camera, and we're going to take it down to the seaside and put some colour film through it to pay homage to the early colour work of Mervyn O'Gorman. If you've never heard of him, just keep watching. This camera had the catchy title of number 1A folding pocket Kodak Model D. It was manufactured by the Eastman Kodak Company from 1909 to 1915. It was fitted with a meniscus achromatic lens and the new Kodak Pocket automatic shutter. The late 1900s were a gilded era. Companies like Kodak and Ford were using mass production to bring things that were previously reserved for the elites to everyone. The folding pocket cameras were more compact than the box cameras and more functional. They were designed to allow anyone to document their lives at just $12 or $400 in today's money. All you had to do was load the film, point the thing in the right direction, and fire the shutter. This camera was originally designed to take 1/16 roll film, which is what this spool is here. Now you can't get 1/16 roll film anymore, so we're going to be using 120 roll film, just to make things slightly more complicated. As you can see, 1/16 is slightly wider than 120, so we need to adapt it. I bought some little 3D printed adapters off eBay for about £6. You can chop an old spool in half and jam it in the other way around, or you can use brass tubes. You can use whatever you want to make the spaces up, but this is quite a nice little neat solution. The next thing you're going to need to do is cut a gate mask for the camera. Because the older film was much bigger, the gate's designed for the bigger film, and in fact back in the day the cameras still had gate masks so that you could shoot different aspect ratios and different gate sizes depending on what you wanted to shoot and how many pictures you wanted on a roll. Here we need to cut a gate mask because if we don't, the film's going to be flapping around and there is a possibility of light coming through the lens and wrapping itself around the back and fogging the edges of our film. To make a gate mask, use a thick piece of black card and cut it to fit the size of the camera's existing film gate. Then in the centre of your card, cut a square hole to form the new gate. The size of your new gate will dictate the size of your images and the number you get on a roll. I've chosen 6x7, which should give me 8 images per roll. I also noticed at this point some issues with the wooden frame of the camera, so very carefully glued that back together before anyone noticed. Because the camera was designed for 1/16 film, you're not going to be able to see which frame number you're on in the window on the back. So in order to find out how far we need to wind on the film without the window, we're going to have to count turns, which is arduous and somewhat annoying. Load your film up to the point where the start mark sits over the roller. Take a piece of tape or blue tack or whatever and mark off where the wind on handle is. Now we're going to count the number of turns before we can wind the first shot into position. 1 half turn.
2 half turns. 3 half turns. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
10. 5 full turns, 10 half turns. Now we need to count the number of turns it takes to wind the film on for every shot. So this is our first shot. We'll call this our second. 1, 2, 3. Takes you slightly past it. So it's 1.5 full turns per shot or 3 half turns. We're not quite ready to shoot yet. We have 2 more problems to solve. The first problem we have to solve is the shutter. We have instantaneous, bulb and time. When we know what time is, it's whatever time you want it. You know what bulb is, but we don't know what shutter speed instantaneous is. Some people tell me it's 1/25th of a second. Some people tell me it's a 50th of a second. To find out once and for all what the shutter speed on this camera actually is, I put an incandescent lamp behind it, I put an IR receiver on the other side, I plug the IR receiver into a scope and I flick the shutter. Even after 110 years, this shutter consistently gave me an exposure of 42 milliseconds, which to the normal photographer is 1/25 of a second. You're welcome. The next thing I have to figure out is these bloody f-stops. They're not f-stops, it's the Kodak system of number 1 to 4. And I have no idea what that means. So when I look at the manual, it says things like, use setting number 3 on a cloudy day with the sun behind you and a goat flying through the sky. Well, that's not much help to me. I need to know what they are as f-stops. My first cunning plan involved comparing it to a camera with f-stops and measuring the light transmitted through both lenses with a light meter. I then did an exposure test, and I can absolutely confirm that I sort of think the following might possibly be correct. Number 1, f11. Number 2, f16. Number 3, f22. Number 4, f32. I think. Around the time our camera was made, there was a major breakthrough in colour film technology. The Lumiere brothers released Autochrome, a technology based on using glass photo plates covered with 4 million grains of potato starch, which were coloured into 3 main colours, red, blue and green. It was using the autochrome process that Mervyn O'Gorman took his famous pictures of Christina in red, photographed at Lulworth Cove in Dorset. I can't get the temperamental autochrome plates today, but I do have a few rolls of Kodak Portra, a film introduced 90 years after the Lumiere brothers brought out their potato starch based process. So my first roll on the old Kodak came out badly fogged. The camera has no means of tensioning the film, which made counting turns inaccurate, and the rolls came out partially unwound. Oh, what a mess. That's a shame. But after that, I unloaded the camera under my jacket, which helped, and then later on, I unloaded the camera in a changing bag, which eliminated the issue. So with the problem solved, it was a privilege taking pictures on a 110-year-old camera, and the images feel like stepping back in time. If you want to see more of these images, I'll post them on the Olitography Facebook group. And until next week, like, share, sub and shoot, and I'll see you in the next video.